So let's talk numbers and try and see if we can set some realistic return on investment expectations.
There is this illusion that I think is sold online sometimes with a dropshipping business that there is some sort of secret potion or magic that is different to the rest of the laws that govern the rest of our lives.
But it's about smart investment, not no investment at all.
There is a misconception around the word dropshipping, and when people think about it as a business model,
it was a grind, but I loved every minute of it because I was like a sponge just absorbing all of this information.
Almost gives you an idea of like a gimmicky business that you're not taking seriously. You're looking to make a quick buck. You're not looking to look after customers.
One of the biggest myths in dropshipping is this idea of Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast. I'm Lewis Smith, the founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording the podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. Keen to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business? My book, The Home Turf Advantage, is your blueprint for launching a profitable online store. Grab your copy at htabook.com today and let's get you started. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's on the mind of many aspiring entrepreneurs, and that is the truth about starting a dropshipping business. We're here to set the record straight on expectations versus reality. So, Lewis, dropshipping has exploded in popularity over the last few years, but there is a lot of misinformation out there. So what do you think is the first thing that our listeners should understand about starting a business in this space?
Yeah, it definitely has exploded. You're right, James. Its popularity seems to just be increasing year upon year. And I think that's with the shift towards remote work, people wanting to run an online business. But it's important to understand that whilst dropshipping is a great entry point into entrepreneurship, it's a great path to not just an entry point, to build a long-term, sustainable, location-independent business that allows you to run it just from a laptop, and it doesn't require huge amounts of overhead, and it's very scalable. With all that said, it's not an overnight success story. It's a journey that requires dedication. You've got to put the time in, you've got to put the reps in, put the hours in. But much like any worthwhile endeavor, it's worth that front loading of that work to get the result eventually. If you go into it expecting overnight success, if you expect it to be this instant quick win, quick cash, get rich quick scheme that you hear talked about, it's like expecting to just win a marathon just because you bought a new pair of running shoes. You know, it's like you've discovered a new strategy and you think that's the key to it. And how many people buy a great new pair of running shoes or a home treadmill or something, and then it just ends up sitting there and they never really use them. And you realize the real victory lies in the training, in the persistence. It lies in actually taking action and doing the reps and getting through those early initial hurdles to get your business up and running. Now, we do things a little bit differently. I think the rise in popularity that's happened over the last few years has been because of the low barrier to entry with dropshipping when you are shipping cheap products, usually from China or from outside of the UK, that take a long time to be delivered, have very low profit margins, have lots of returns, lots of complaints, lots of refund requests, and you end up running into all types of problems doing it that way. As you may or may not know, depending on how many episodes of the podcast you've watched before, our model is different. We have a focus on high ticket, so higher priced items, which in dropshipping is a game changer. It makes sense for so many different reasons. So it's about aiming for quality over quantity, which can significantly impact not just your profit as a business owner, but your enjoyment of running the business as well. If you compare the two types of business, like which would you prefer to run initially as a solo entrepreneur? Because you probably won't have a huge team to manage a 10-person customer support department for you and a returns department and an HR. You don't want that. You don't want the headaches, right? As a new entrepreneur. So choosing high ticket items to focus on if you're going into dropshipping is like deciding to open a restaurant and you think, okay, I could open a fast food restaurant here and maybe just get a franchise and then it's just throughput but low quality food, but I need to do really high volumes of it. Or I open up a gourmet restaurant and instead I say I'm okay with fewer customers because the experience that every customer will get will be so much better, which means that I can charge a higher value, which means they'll get higher value from their experience. And it just means every customer interaction can count. And so I know which type of business I would opt for of the two. And it's the same in e-commerce. It's exactly the same concept. I recently wanted to upskill myself in another area of my business. And I thought, well, how do I do this? Like, I haven't yet reached the level that I'm aiming for. So I had options. I could go and buy a cheap course or a cheap program online, and I could look on YouTube and try and piece it together in my mind. That's like the fast food approach, right? I could just look at a low investment and see if I can make it work. Or I could opt for the best. I could find the best premium level mastermind that ended up costing me well over £10,000 and just go for it because I know it's the best thing for me. It's the high ticket option, but I know I'll get the most value from it. And so I'm so glad that I did it, because the fact that I did it meant that I didn't then need to search for lots of others. They don't have a huge volume of people coming through their business. And since I've been inside it, I've already done things that I realized that other people in that room were doing, and I could just learn directly from them rather than having to piece things together myself. So it's the same approach, whether you're selling physical products online or if you're thinking about investing in yourself. Oftentimes going for that higher priced, higher value option will pay dividends in the long term. But one of the things that is worth mentioning with this, and whilst we can make progress, you can jump in and start a dropshipping business and think that you're going to start seeing sales come through quickly. We're not going to see profitability overnight in all likelihood. So I just want to be upfront, manage expectations at that front. It's like during lockdown, we all remember that time, and we were allowed, I think it was for like one run per day or one like walk per day. That was the rules, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to make my run count. And I had a route in London that I used to run, and I used to track my time on it. And I remember setting myself a target every day, using my one opportunity to go and beat that target. And I kind of made it into like a game, like I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat it. And I used to get up really early to try and like get out on that route before any traffic hit, because when you're running in London, if you hit one traffic light at the wrong time, it ruins your personal time, okay, because you get stuck at the light. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And every day I would do it and I'd come near, but I wouldn't quite succeed. And one day I woke up and it was blue skies. It was such a clear day. It was amazing. Went out, no traffic, really early. And I just flew through that route. I knew it so well, like the back of my hand. And I reached my personal best. But the reason that it felt so good isn't because I just woke up and thought, oh, I'll just do my personal best today. It's because I worked towards it. It was the experience of building and trying to beat it that made that achievement so much more fulfilling. And it felt better because I'd taken that hard work and that persistence and that action, and it finally paid off. So it's the same with dropshipping and business. Don't expect it to be an overnight success, but when you are successful, it will be so much better because you put in the hours and the reps.
That's a great analogy, Lewis. It's so true. I think most people understand with every other area of life that if you're going to achieve something great, there'll be work that you have to put in. Everyone understands if you're going to run a marathon, then there's going to be months of training. If you're going to go ahead and save up for a new car, there's going to be time worth sacrifice. People understand that there has to be effort to get the rewards. But sometimes there is this illusion that I think is sold online sometimes with a dropshipping business, that there is some sort of secret potion or magic that is different to the rest of the laws that govern the rest of our lives, that we can go into dropshipping businesses and suddenly see overnight success. So as I discovered, starting a business, that absolutely the success is there, but it is governed by the same rules as everything else in life, that you will put work in, you'll put the time in, you'll learn the lessons, and you'll get to success when you put in consistent action, like everything else. And it was a great lesson to learn. I think setting that from the start, Lewis, is a good point that you've made there. So moving into the more misconceptions that we see around dropshipping, because there are plenty, what would you say is one of the most common misconceptions that you hear?
Yeah, probably the biggest myth, if you like, in dropshipping is this idea of the overnight success. And it doesn't help when you see YouTube videos that are using these kind of flashy headlines and flashy titles to try and grab people in, to convince them that like, I tried dropshipping for 1 week and here are the results. And you just think, well, if it was that easy, everyone would do it, right? So it's not that easy, which is good, because the people who put in the effort kind of build a moat around themselves and can build a long-term sustainable business. So like with any solid structure that you're building in real life, a successful business needs stronger foundations to build over time. And last night I was reading my 2-year-old son a bedtime story. I put him to bed and he was like, Dad, can you read me a story? So I thought, okay, picked up a nursery rhymes book and flipped to page 65, and it was Jack and the Beanstalk, right? And you probably know the story. Kid's walking down the street. I think he trades in his cow for some magic beans or magic seeds that he can then plant in the ground. And he does that. And the next morning, lo and behold, there's a beanstalk that's grown out of the ground and it's above the clouds already. Okay, perfect scenario. So he wakes up in the morning, he climbs up to the clouds, meets the giant, etc., etc. I'm sure you know the story. And it made me think, firstly, I wonder if something that grows that quickly will ever be created in nature, possibly some genetically modified mutant beanstalk or something in the future might be created. But the point is, people expect sometimes with business that they'll just sprinkle a few seeds, like they'll upload a few products to a dodgy looking e-commerce store that they've thrown together cheaply. They go to sleep and then they wake up in the morning the next day and lo and behold, the store's grown above the clouds. They've got these sales flying in from all angles and it's just an overnight success. And it's just not going to happen. There's a reason why Jack and the Beanstalk is a fairy tale, right? One of the biggest myths in dropshipping is this idea of overnight success. And so that's one of the things that I think we need to debunk and say, actually, it's not going to be an overnight success, but it can happen after a lot of build up. So after front loading the work, eventually there will be a tipping point where to outsiders, it might seem like an overnight success, but you've been working on building those foundations, on growing the beanstalk, if you like, right, for a long time. Now, the other thing that sometimes goes around as a myth, as a false expectation, is thinking that people can start without any investment at all. It's a bit like saying, right, I'm going to start a band, but we don't have any instruments. It's like, well, the right tools in that environment are essential to create something of value. I guess you could create an a cappella band, but if you're going to create an instrumental band and you don't have any instruments, then there's no investment there. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to do it. You might have to start beatboxing or find some other ways to make it work. So I think that's the myth, that you can start with zero investment. Now, whilst dropshipping does offer the opportunity of a much lower upfront cost, you've not got things like leasing a huge warehouse. You've not got to commit loads of capital to buying stock in or paying for containers to come in from China or hiring a full team or a sales team or anything like that. You can effectively get the business up and running with a very low upfront investment, but there are still expenses, and you want to go into this with your eyes wide open. We'll be upfront and honest with you and tell you that expenses like ads, like developing your website, even if you're doing it yourself, there will be some costs associated with it, maybe getting logos designed, maybe a bit of web design here and there if you're not that good at it yourself and you want tweaks done by a freelancer. But it's about smart investment, not no investment at all. I wouldn't celebrate the fact that I got my business up and running with no investment. To me, that just says, okay, well, then you were just trading your time for money, and think how good it could have been if you had invested some of that money into the right skills, into the right mentorship community, into the right platforms, into the right ads. Like, you could have got up and running so much faster. So it's not necessarily something I'd celebrate. And I think many are sold on this dream of passive income. They talk about this in the 4-hour work week, and it sounds amazing. And everyone dreams of, like, you're lying in your hammock and you've got money flowing into your bank account and you never have to do anything because it's passive income. Now, whilst dropshipping can offer more freedom, it's not entirely hands-off. We won't tell you that it is. We front load the work with these businesses. We put in the time, the effort, the infrastructure, so that later we can remove ourselves from the director, the CEO position of the business, and make ourselves an owner of the business. Those two roles are very different. When you first start, you are the sales rep, the marketing manager, the customer support, the returns, the HR, that you are doing everything, right? You're running the ads, you're the media buyer. But eventually you can put people in place, systems, softwares in place for those things, and you can start to kind of retreat a little bit from the business so that you can take a top level view and realize I've now got my life back and I have an income source here that is semi-passive. Maybe occasionally you log in and pay suppliers once a month, but day to day, you're not really doing that much. And then that frees up capacity to create a second or a third business. So that's another myth that I think we need to bust. It's not entirely passive, but that's okay. It's fun. It's all part of the challenge.
It is. And I think these misconceptions, they come from half-truths that people realize that dropshipping has such a low barrier to entry and that it's a low investment business to start. There's not high upfront costs. And then people realize that you can have it running semi-passively. Then that gets exaggerated to zero investment required and zero time required. It's sort of taken to that extreme because there are those advantages, but we still need to be realistic that of course there's going to be an investment and of course there's going to be time down the lines. But there is, and I really want to get into this today, Lewis, like as we are doing, there is a misconception around the word dropshipping. And when people think about it as a business model, there's the idea that you can watch 2 or 3 free YouTube videos and have a business that's generating thousands the next month. And I can laugh at this myself only because I absolutely was in that position beforehand where I also believed that. And I thought I'll watch a few videos, start a business, watch the money come in the next month. So I can see how it is easy to fall into that. But I'm glad that we can really dive in and understand that it is a genuine business. We're looking after customers. We're selling quality products. We're creating a genuine e-commerce business. We're not just, it's not a gimmicky type of dropshipping business that we're running and we're not taking very seriously. It is different from that, but the rewards are amazing. And we've seen some fantastic rewards that our members have had in the masterclass community. And you mentioned it looks from the outside like overnight success, but of course they've put in work to get to that position. So perhaps you could share with us the stories that you've heard from our masterclass members that really paints a picture of what the reality of dropshipping is.
Yeah, where to start? There are so many success stories now. It's fascinating inside our community. You just have to log in there, and there's always new wins being posted in there every single day about someone leaving their job, or someone making their first 100K, or someone signing just a new supplier, or making their first sale. Like wins of all levels of the spectrum. I mean, when I first started, if I'm talking about my personal experience, I had these visions of quick success. I was like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to fly through the failures and the obstacles and the hurdles until I get the result that I'm after, which was that time, location, freedom, that autonomy and control back over my time. But the reality was, it wasn't anywhere near that level of freedom when I started. It was the nights of research because I was balancing it with a day job at the time. It was the early mornings of researching, calling suppliers, learning, absorbing, building relationships with suppliers, learning ads. It was a grind, but I loved every minute of it because I was like a sponge just absorbing all of this information and thinking every single clue and every single piece of context that I'm gathering here is preparing me to go it alone and to become a business owner that eventually when I make that jump, I'll feel way more prepared and so much more set up for this. So that was my own experience initially. And I look back on how quickly I had to absorb that information and take action. And it makes me realize how little I really knew going into it. I think if I could jump back into my former mind before I joined, it would be fascinating to kind of read what my expectations were and what I thought. Like I thought I had the answers. I thought, the only thing I probably need is like the suppliers, because I know how to run ads. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos. I know how to do Facebook ads and basic Google ads. But there's so many parts of this business model that I had to learn the hard way. And I made so many costly mistakes, especially trying to apply this into the UK market where it wasn't taught. So it's great to see that the members that we work with now can avoid a lot of those really costly, time-consuming mistakes and just take the most direct path to getting a fast return on their investment. That's what it's all about. We don't want to make it more difficult than it needs to be for people. One of our members, Phil, for example, who we featured in episode 43, we had a chat with him. He balanced a full-time job whilst he was launching his dropshipping business, and his dedication to that turned his initial investment into £162,000 return in around 5 months. So he's just hit £162,000 in sales 5 months since joining the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass. And We just saw that post, I think, yesterday in our community. So it's about persistence and it's about learning from every single step, just like Phil did there. Great example. But success doesn't come without its challenges. Every entrepreneur is going to face hurdles, but it's that resilience, it's that willingness to adapt that makes all the difference. And if you can have a community of like-minded entrepreneurs and aspiring business owners around you and a blueprint to follow, it's going to make your path so much less costly, but also so much more enjoyable.
It's so much more rewarding when you know the work that you've put in. Then you can really feel proud of yourself that you've made the rewards and you've made the success that you're looking for in the first place. Phil's story is incredible, and that episode was an absolute pleasure. And on the topic of what we're talking about, Phil talked exactly about the work that he put in. And he talks about the fact that, of course, there were sacrifices and he had to put work in to get it up to that point. But he was so honest with us about the work that he put in. And he made a point that everyone can do it when you put the work in to get to that stage. I know we've had a great story and great conversations with Jared, who's done £4 million now in his first few years. We've had a conversation with him on the podcast recently. And Suraj, we featured him as well. He made sort of £12,000 to £13,000 in his first few months as well. And we can reel off names all day because there's that many wins that we see now in the masterclass community. It is a pleasure to see. But the common theme, of course, is that these people are putting work in and they're building genuine, serious businesses. They don't see themselves as dropshippers because that almost gives you an idea of like a gimmicky business that you're not taking seriously. You're looking to make a quick buck. You're not looking to look after customers. You're not looking to sell high quality products. Instead, they see themselves as e-commerce business owners, serious people with serious businesses making serious money. And I think that's the key that I've seen in the thread of successful members that we've spoken to. So with that said, what would you say are some realistic return on investment expectations for people to have in their mind when they're just starting out in dropshipping?
Absolutely. So let's talk numbers and try and see if we can set some realistic return on investment expectations. Because that, I think, is crucial for anyone who's beginning their dropshipping journey. You want to know when you've invested, how quickly can you see an ROI on that investment? So your initial investment might range from anywhere from a few £100s to a few £1,000s, covering website setup, ads. Maybe if you do decide to shortcut your route to success and invest in a program or mentorship for education, maybe for accountability, community support, live meetups with other aspiring business owners like yourself, like that might mean that your initial investment, your initial outlay is a little bit more. But how fast you can see a return on investment then will depend on how quickly you can get your questions answered and your effort and your strategy and your determination and how much action you take as well. So I think the investment in the right mentorship, guidance and strategy and a community is like, if you think about, if you go back to the gourmet restaurant example that I talked about earlier, imagine you've decided you're going for your gourmet restaurant instead of the fast food chain. So you've decided high ticket is for you. You decide to invest in a high quality set of kitchen knives for your chef. Okay, so like a really good sharp set of knives. Now, initially, that might seem like a big outlay relatively, but once that chef is cutting through the ingredients and not wasting time and not complaining and making these masterpiece dishes that far outweigh the initial cost of those knives, because of how much you can then charge for them as a restaurant, it all makes sense and you realize how worthwhile it was rather than buying some dodgy set of blunt knives off Wish, So it's like, you want to make sure that you're getting the high quality setup and the foundations in place first. And the beauty of dropshipping is its scalability. So once you're up and running, scaling up the business just becomes a matter of optimizing your ads, maybe setting up your website, improving your conversion rate on your site, and then just building more supplier relationships. So it's certainly not uncommon for us to see members of our Dropship Unlocked Masterclass with their businesses double or triple their revenue as they start to refine their operations. I remember when one of our members who you just mentioned, Jared, we were first talking when he joined the program a few years ago, and he was working with us, making a few sales when he first started. And once he was up and running with his store, probably, I don't know how long, 6 weeks in, something like that. And we used to chat about the challenges he was having and the questions he had on our weekly coaching calls. We have 2 coaching calls every week. And we were asking how he was getting on, and he was always asking the right questions. And you could just hear the belief he had in himself and that he was going to make it. And we were just there to facilitate that approach. And it was getting the mindset in the right place. He'd invested in himself. He was serious about this. And over time, he's been able to scale that initial investment to beyond £4 million in sales just for one of his stores. I think he has multiple now. Now, we actually had Jared on the podcast in episode 39 of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We talked to Jared about how he went from 0 to £4 million in sales by focusing not just on quick wins, but on building a brand and on building customer loyalty as well. So definitely check out that episode 39.
Yeah, and he spoke to us about customer loyalty, which isn't something that's often associated with dropshippers and dropshipping businesses. I think there's an idea, the expectations out there that if you're dropshipping, you probably don't really think about the customer's journey. And there's an idea that the ads that you actually run as a dropshipper are a little bit misleading, and they sell and promise something that you can't deliver on with the products. But it's different with the business model that we employ and I employ. We make sure that customers are having a fantastic experience. They've got high quality products that are delivered quickly, and that way we get repeat custom. So I think we've done a good job today of really setting out what the reality is. And in my mind, the reality is so much better than the expectations that we initially set. Although it's hard work, the eventual reward is so much better. You'll end up making more money because it's a real genuine business that has long-term rewards, because it's scalable, and with consistent effort, you can take it as far as you want to. And also, you feel rewarded for the work that you've put in the whole way through, and you've got lessons that you can take with you to build other businesses forever, for the rest of your life. So the reality, I think, is so much better than what I first pictured when I first thought about starting a dropshipping business. It's been great to talk about the stories that we've heard of, so we can really set the expectations of what reality is. And I know that Ben, another member of ours who's recently hit 50k in sales, he talked to us and gave us a long post in the community about his journey and about the ups and downs. But ultimately, the success he's seeing and is about to see now that he's hired his virtual assistant, it's going to be fantastic to watch. Leanne as well. So Marco and Leanne work together, and she and Marco, they've been telling us about the success that they're seeing now, and things are really kicking off in their business. And every day, these stories are just inspirational. So finally then, to wrap up your sort of final thoughts on this episode, what would your advice be if you could summarize it for listeners that are considering a path into dropshipping?
Well, educating yourself would be my first piece of advice. It's like investing in the premium set of high quality kitchen knives for your new chef at your new restaurant. You will save them so much time, and you'll save yourself so much money and frustration, and ultimately earn a lot more money by just seeing the big picture and investing in your long-term success. So yes, whilst educating yourself might require a little bit of outlay initially, the results that you get from doing it are incomparable to the results you get from trying to do it alone. So arm yourself with knowledge. Our episodes like how to start a dropshipping business with zero experience, which was episode 27 of the podcast. I mean, that's a great starting point if you haven't listened to that one already. The next thing would be to take calculated risks. You've got to be prepared to invest not just money, but also time and effort. Remember, these things don't happen overnight. And that's part of the beauty of the enjoyment of success when they do happen, because you enjoyed the process. And so many of our members say they're loving the process of building their business, which is music to my ears, because it makes me realize that they will be fulfilled with this for the long term. They're not just waiting until they make it. They are loving the process of building it, and therefore they'll love the process of running it and eventually owning the business and removing themselves from it. But to do that, you've got to take some calculated risks initially, because that's what leads to the most significant rewards. And then action above all. Really start taking action. No amount of planning replaces the lessons learned through actual hands-on experience. Remember how I said I just learned so much in my first few months of looking into this. And it's like, if you're learning to surf and you buy all the surfing books and you read all through the surfing techniques, and then you watch all the surfing videos on YouTube, and you paddle out on your surfboard, but you never go for it. You never try and stand up on the board. You never try and catch a wave. You won't take any action. Without action, then the surfer's never going to see any progress, right? So every small step that you make brings you closer to your goal. And if you're thinking, well, what first step do I take? A great first step, if you're ready to take action and you want to connect with the like-minded entrepreneurs and aspiring business owners, would be to visit htabook.com and pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage.
Enjoying the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a review, and we might just feature it on an upcoming episode. Also, for detailed show notes and resources, head to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast.
If you found value from any episode of this podcast, please take just 10 seconds to leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps us more than you could imagine, and who knows, you might just hear your comments on the show. Thanks for being part of our community. Your support helps us keep delivering a new episode every week.
Now, let's answer a question that we've had in from a listener. So thank you to Model Buildings 2010. That's their YouTube handle, because they left this question in a YouTube comment under one of our recent episodes of the podcast on YouTube. So if you want your questions answered, all you need to do, leave us a comment under this video with a question, and we'll answer it on an upcoming episode. So Model Buildings 2010 has asked, hi there, do all of your members, do they all use a Shopify website?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So we recommend Shopify to all of our members as the go-to platform for building their e-commerce businesses. And it's for a couple of reasons. Mainly, it's just extremely user-friendly. It's got a really robust support system, so you're not kind of on your own and have to go and hire a web developer if anything goes wrong. Shopify's support is incredible, and they have such an extensive integration capability. So many different apps, so many different integrations that you can use. It just stands out head and shoulders above and apart from the competitors, in our opinion. Certainly if this is your first venture into e-commerce. It's ease of use, it's scalability. You know, some of the biggest e-commerce stores out there are still using Shopify, which says a lot about it, right? And a wide range of different themes that you can use. So customization, different apps. I mean, you can cater for pretty much any business need you have. And it just makes it such an ideal platform for beginners and even for seasoned entrepreneurs alike as well. So yeah, all of our successful members have utilized Shopify to build their high ticket dropshipping businesses from the ground up. And I think the thing that our members who use Shopify appreciate the most, especially the ones who have said, oh, I'm familiar with WordPress, or I could do this with WooCommerce, or I've always had a background with Magento. When they come in and start using Shopify and they realize, actually, it's the reliability, it's the comprehensive e-commerce tools that are kind of included within it. It's so far beyond anything else out there in the market. So, for the very small costs that they charge, it's just worth it for that simplicity and that ease of use, and not focusing on the wrong things when you're starting your business. Don't split hairs over which platform, go with the market leader. For those ready to begin their e-commerce journey, we've actually secured a special deal with Shopify. So if you're thinking about checking it out and you think, yeah, I'd like to have a go at building a store, if you use our exclusive link in the description, which is dropshipunlocked.com/Shopify, you can start your Shopify store and get 3 days for free. Then you get 1 month for just £1. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. You might as well just click that link, dive in and get started and just have a look around. Try building a store, and it will cost you nothing for the first 3 days and then £1 for the first month. So it's dropshipunlocked.com/Shopify.
It is definitely a no-brainer. Thanks for that answer, Lewis. Shopify is the leading e-commerce platform, and so go to the best. Why settle for anything less? I read recently that there's about over 4 million stores that are built with Shopify, and the revenue of all the stores was over 200 billion last year. So I think it's clear to see they are a market leader, and absolutely we should go for the best. So thank you for your question. And now let's highlight a review that we've had in for the podcast recently. I love reading these out. So a big thank you to Diana811 for sharing your thoughts in a recent YouTube comment. And so Diana811 said, thank you guys. Quality content, to the point, highly motivating to keep listening. I'm just soaking up episode after episode. Really appreciate your efforts.
Wow, thank you so much for your review, Diana881. Lovely to hear that you've been soaking up the podcast episodes, and that's how we try and make it to the point, highly motivating, and hopefully that you're really enjoying the content and will continue to be putting it out. Now, quick question for you. Would you like a chance to join our elite masterclass program and community for free? If so, simply leave us a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you're listening, and check out episode 52 of the Dropship Unlocked podcast for full details on how to enter the competition.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you're walking away with insights and inspiration.
To kickstart your e-commerce journey, grab a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, at htabook.com. It's a distilled guide based on real experience to help you build your e-commerce venture.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strategies and success stories. And if you like what you heard, a 5-star review would mean the world to us, and you might just get a shout out on an upcoming episode.
And finally, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We can't wait to bring you more insights on the next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.